So, considering the topic today, fast and slow, my technology has been testing this concept. I don't know if I really can't blame the internet, honestly, because I'm still streaming. I really think it's my computer telling me it's like, yo, I'm slowing down because I need a break. And you've been working me for this laptop has been 3, if not 4 years. And I'm sitting over here, it's 10:14. So I was prepared to start at 10 o'clock. And I spent the last 14 minutes practicing patience with this technology because I could. Thankfully, I am aware enough, and I literally was about to talk about it, and I was like, don't be a hypocrite today. Don't be a hypocrite today, Sarah. So if this video on YouTube and Facebook is a little bit delayed, it's because it's coming through my laptop. If on Instagram is probably a way better circumstance. So here nor there. But I digress. Welcome back. It's Friday. It's another episode, I guess. Talk about how to align with transformation. So really the things that I really like to talk about in terms of a recovery mindset of how do we navigate, whether you're recovering from mental illness, whether you're recovering from a substance addiction in general, building a mindset around recovery and being able to facilitate your own healing, being able to manifest, whatever it is that you want to call it. We're not arguing that the law of attraction, God, whatever the situation is, it exists. It is more about how do you tap into it and how do you align with it. Given that I have my background, not educationally, but spiritually, I come from a very agnostic space when I first applied a lot of these principles. And so it really had nothing to do with faith. You can check out my other video about the foundational faith systems, where I go into a little bit more of my own story about why I'm glad I did not believe in a God as a higher power when I first started this journey. But today I'm really going to get kind of like, I want to talk about this dichotomy between fast and slow, because this is what really like addiction thrives off of. So hopefully I've outlined a couple of, main points of consideration for y'all when you're taking a look at your own lives. Now, this is definitely going to be easy to identify in other people's lives because we're literally built to pay attention to other people more than to pay attention to ourselves. But that's the kind of the trickery of therapy, and what I do is that I help people align with themselves to understand their most accessible power in ability and what they can control in this life. Over time, that actually helps the brain be able to rebalance. And when we're talking about mental illness, autism, all the realm of mental health, I sit on the side of the spectrum where it's like, okay, let's take an understanding of how you work, how you as an individual, but generally how the brain works, as well as what's influenced you to get here so we can figure out where to go from here. So that's why I speak a lot more on recovery. So let's get into it, because this fast and slow, and hopefully my internet is not doing that fast and slow thing too. But if it is, like I said before, you can check me out on Right Size Perspective Instagram for a more consistent stream, because I'm not coming through my computer. But hopefully you guys can still hear me. But this fast and slow concept is really about the concept of pleasure and happiness. So what I mean by that is because I've got a neuroscience background. I'm more social science, but done a lot of research in holistic wellness and evidence-based practices. That's how I'm trained. So when we're talking about pleasure versus happiness, we're really talking about the brain. So we're really talking about how pleasure only accesses about 1/3 of the brain. So pleasure is about dopamine seeking. So when we're talking about attention deficit disorder, anxiety, depression, procrastination, which is not a mental illness, but it is a very common byproduct of mental health challenges, is that we're really looking at how much of your brain is actually working. Dopamine seeking, procrastination is a lot about that dopamine seeking because we're chronically addicted to the stress that motivates us to accomplish and or complete something. So when we have trained our brains that way, and it's not all your fault because it's trained by external stimuli as well, technology taking over things for us, being overly reliant on a parent system to attend to your needs, not knowing what produces energy in your reality and how you ultimately can control and manipulate that. Only part of your brain in that centerpiece, and it's a very small piece compared to the bigger external cortexes around it, that's pretty much the amount of your brain that you're using. And this is why people get stuck in fight or flight. This is why people get stuck in procrastination cycle. This is why people get stuck in their feelings and they become more addictive personalities. But I also have to remind you guys that addiction does not discriminate. So are there natural circumstances where people do not have addictive personalities? Yes. I believe they grew up in well-regulated households, probably financially stable households. They had a lot of different types of privileges, not necessarily just racial privilege, but a lot of that has to do with it. But they had a lot of privileges where they didn't have as much stress and dysregulation around them. And so therefore, they're able to access more of their brain's capacity just naturally to be more calm, to be more centered, to be able to handle stress well. A lot of people say that about me, and there's some truth to that. I did grow up in a more privileged place than some other people. However, I did not grow up in a stress-free environment. And a lot of your presentation, or my presentation to you guys today, about being calm, cool, collected, I handle crisis as well, is because I grew up having to survive. And over time, I have retrained not only my brain, but I have retrained my behaviors to reinforce and protect me from some of that overwhelm, overstimulation, that fast life, that go, 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 right? So this is absolutely attainable to retrain yourself to be able to have both, being able to, yes, Maisie, we know. To be able to have those fast pace, be out there in the general public, live in the fast life, but also having the ability to take your foot off the accelerator and slow down. Now, the slow part this is where happiness comes into play. So the fast is usually pleasure seeking because the fast, if you have a fun night, let's just say it this way, if you have a fun night, out with your friends, it's not usually a slow night. It's usually y'all get into some stuff. We're drinking. We're speeding up things. Okay? It's not, let's just take it slow. Let's just enjoy the scenery. It's not usually that, right? So there's a purpose to having both. Now, a lot of people in our society, they live and they stay in the fast lane. And that's where you got to be mindful. We'll talk about mindfulness in a minute, of how to be able to live both lives. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because using my life as an example, I'm hitting another season where I'm about to speed up. This week has been a freaking beast, and it has given me so much value of peace and slowing down. It is a necessity. Now, I've been practicing this for 6 some odd years at this point, and still learning a lot about how to navigate that, learning about my limits, learning about the signs that I need to pay attention to is okay, slow down. We need to regulate, okay? But the slowness is really about happiness, because this is this discussion that I think, I haven't seen much of it recently, but I see it often, is that is happiness attainable? Absolutely. But it's also something that you have to be willing to lose, because when you go into the fast lane, you're going right back to pleasure. And they're two very different things. Happiness actually is about developing serotonin versus pleasure being about dopamine. So happiness comes with sustainability. Serotonin, sustainability. Dopamine, damage, drama, trauma, all that stuff. Okay. Not necessarily all, but we're looking at the balance of it, okay? So happiness, serotonin, can access more of the brain. I'm looking at this recording of me right now, and it is wanting to piss me off. But I'm going to digress. We might have to get a new computer today, though. So the serotonin brings us more access to the brain. So when we talk about psychotropic medications, SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, it's a matter of allowing your brain to use more of itself, which is why psychotropic medications can be helpful for some people. Then we also have to take a look at the other behavioral and belief systems, and that's ultimately what therapy, at least with me, most therapy addresses for the most part. I just tell my clients, please don't compare me to any other therapist, because you're not going to find another therapist. There's someone I'm sure similar to me, but we all have different perspectives and we all have different ways of presenting therapeutic concepts to people. And there's some therapists who are also in this fast, slow category. I try to be right there in the middle for a lot of people, is because some people are at a place in their lives where they can receive information quickly. They can download it, they can apply it, and they get the results quickly. There are some people who need to take it a little bit slower. And there are some therapists who are better suited for the people who need to take it just a little bit slower. Okay? That's not to discriminate. It's just a matter of, it's not that you can be effective, but sometimes it can be kind of damaging if you're not careful, as not only as a client, but as a professional, if you are forcing a client to go faster than they are possible. Because as an example, you basically, what this looks like and you running into this is people pleasing. I had a client yesterday where I was giving them an example of a metaphor of how this concept of fast and slow, whenever we get into relationships, them particularly, does the brain, it goes into fast mode. It's like, oh my God, I like this person. I really want it. That is all about the pleasure principle in the brain. And it's because it feels so good to be attracted to someone. It feels so good to connect with someone who it's just easy, and that is consuming. So then we get into these relationships and go, and then we hit the stressful times and we're like, this person is horrible. They're not for me. It's just this all or nothing fall off. And when honestly, most people, if you give it time, can you build healthy relationships with? However, it's complicated and we're not going to talk about that right now. But how did I even get there? Let me slow down. I got there from happiness, right? So when we talk about, and why I am an advocate for a recovery mindset, and specifically, there's a lot of different types of mindset, but I sit in that recovery mindset, will build a recovery lifestyle, is because we are going for the long game. We are, and that feeds right back into that fast or slow. The long game is something that most people don't like because it's not about instant gratification. So it is a slower process. It does take time, except we're being more thorough. We're making sure we're building awareness and consciousness as we're going. So taking it slow and being able to access more of the brain and allowing serotonin to become more familiar, if you're in an unmedicated brain, if you're taking an SSRI or some type of psychotropic medication, and I don't mean drugs in this point, I mean specifically designed drugs and psychotropic medications that are part of an oppressive system, but we'll talk about that another time. They can be helpful because it helps you do the work if you're doing the therapeutic work alongside of the medication therapy, okay? So it's about accessing more of your brain. It's about allowing your brain to trust that it has more capacity, and that you as an individual, you as an identity, are capable of more than what you've been experienced when you've only been accessing the smaller part of your brain. Okay? I'm not going to hit you with a lot of, neuroscience brain terminologies, because to be honest with you, half the time I forget which parts of the brain, and I have to go back and look. But if you go into my app, little drop here for one of the products that I have, you go into the app and into the resource library. I do have some of these diagrams in there. I actually, if I'm thinking about it, I may have to tell my assistant to upload that. But there is a diagram specifically about the brain and the difference between that dopamine seeking versus the serotonin reuptake. And so how you best understand it. Maybe if you're a visual person like I am, that will help a little bit more. But this goes into understanding what addiction is and now how a stable, secure, well-regulated person, if around not only the wrong people in the wrong job or experienced a trauma, it doesn't discriminate against brains, okay? You can be a well-regulated person and not have a history of mental illness or a history of addiction to worry about, but you also could become that person very easily if something were to happen outside of your control, okay? Which is also why I think we're having this mental health quote unquote crisis, which I'm not necessarily reactive about. One, because I deal with crises a lot and every day. So I'm trained and I regulate very intentionally, but also is because change happens in crisis. We now have a reason to take a look and understand why when we talk about health, we've talked about it from like the neck down. We've thought about mental health as a concept. Obviously, I would not be a professional in mental health if it was not a thing, but it has been this very unaccessed community. And now people are rushing to it because something happened that we couldn't control. And this little thing called a pandemic. And this has happened for generations and, ages before us. But we also didn't know what we knew about brain health and ultimately, what it does to the brain. We were starting to figure that out, World War I, World War II, when we started shell shock and PTSD. However, I'm going on a tangent, so let me bring this back around. So let me give you some visual representations of what this fast, slow concept can kind of look like and where the most common kind of areas of discussion that I end up having with my clients are. And the first one, and let me explain real quick before I do that. When I say all or nothing, I'm saying that as a understanding that as human beings, whether you're regulated or not, we are naturally built to be all or nothing things. So your general, even if you're a regulated person, if you're not considering the human nature of being you're either surviving or you're dying, not necessarily surviving or thriving. Thriving is a luxury, right? But surviving or dying. That's really what it comes down to. So survival of the fittest, if you're ever in a situation where what would you do? How would you handle, would you murder someone or kill someone? Hopefully that needs to get edited out and you're not going to do that, but it's literally wired inside of you. So yes, you're responsible and everyone, do not kill people, do not hurt yourself or others, but you also have to understand that it's actually not often fully your choice. It's your brain self-protecting because it feels under threat. And our brains and our bodies are self-protecting. So just as a disclaimer, so when I say all or nothing, let's start looking at what that looks like in our lifestyles. My first examples are vacations. We live in a society today. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, this somewhat applies to you, but it more applies to my clients that work for other agencies or institutions, right? And vacations have come to be work. Work straight for 3 months. Think, work. Take 2 days off. Oh, I should just use weekends as an example. The structure of how we live our life, which is changing because these conversations are now happening about hybrid working, 2 days on, 1 day off, all that, which I have an opinion on, but not here and now. Vacations are this work for 6 months, 3 to 6 months, take off 10 days. All or nothing. Excuse me, my lips were becoming distracting. So what happens and why people don't understand why vacations don't always replenish them is because you're now carrying this energy that you have put off, not paid attention to, not regulated until you have 10 days to regulate it. Now, research shows, and I need to update this, but the last time I checked, the research was showing it takes the brain with intention of practicing mindfulness about 2 to 3 days to adjust to doing something differently than the primary amount of time that you spend doing something. Okay. So when we work for a third of our lives, a third of our weeks, a third of our days, a third of our years. Well, actually, probably more than a third of our years, but 8 hours a day, we're working. And that's if that's the minimum. To this point, people work quite often, right? So when we're working a third of that time, now 10 days becomes 7 days. Let alone if you're not prepared to be intentional about mindfulness and training your brain to disconnect from the things that keep it associating with, well, we spend the rest of our time doing this. Why aren't we doing? Your brain doesn't understand that. You have to, this is where executive functioning has to come back online. We have to use more of our brains because the executive functioning is up here, not in the middle. It's all the way out here. So why we have to start getting our brains back online, and brain health needs to become the conversation primarily with mental health, is because we're not able to make that decision. We're not able to make that choice and prepare. We start to go in anticipation mode of being like, oh, I got to go back to work. Oh, I got to do this. And this is where Monday blues come in. Okay, so this is why I put my group coaching program on Monday night specifically. I thought about Sunday nights, but Sundays are my self-care day because I start my week on a Sunday. When I start planning the next 2 to 3 days, I start preparing myself for what I have and what I can anticipate. And so this is why our bodies are now, we not only conditioned them to be in despair mode of like, oh, I have to go back. Because unless you truly like the people that you work with, the work that you're doing, and you're not burnout, depressed, dealing with anxiety, and not understanding who you are, what your brain and how it works, you're not going to be that excited to go back to work. Sometimes I'm not even, as much as I love my job, I love being able to help people, I love being able to do this, but there's some mornings where, and a lot of it has to do with substances, because I'll eat food late at night and then I'll be tired in the morning, and then I'll be like, oh, I'm going to sleep in a little bit and not get up and go to the gym, and then be like, oh, and then I'll be late to my assignment. It still happens to me, y'all. Like I said, this does not discriminate, obviously, because this is, a lot of my journey. When I talk about, aligning with transformation, I had to deal with a food addiction, which most people need to deal with that too, a topic for another time. And so when our bodies literally feel heavy and there's something imbalanced because we go through something in life, we have a loss, we have to grieve, we have to do this work all over again, but we don't know what work we're supposed to do because we've not talked about mental health for so long, we forget to slow down. Because we feel slow, so therefore we forget to, and our brain can't actually decide to be like, you know what, actually, let me intentionally be slow right now and match our own energy, because mentally we're still fast. We're still like, I gotta be at work. I gotta go. But your body is literally telling you something. It's like, yo, dude, we need a moment. We need a moment. And so if you can mentally start to bring yourself back to getting your brain online, so that breathing regulation, all of this is laid out in my program and in the app, on my social media, whatever. The tools are there for you. How you put them together is up to you. That if you don't start to train your brain about the protocols of what to do in a crisis or a situation where you don't feel connected, then this is where depression starts to manifest. We get anxious, we tune, your brain is just like, okay, she can't really cope with this, so we're just going to disassociate. We're just going to let her do, we're going to struggle through it because we're going to get through it. If you've noticed, if you're still on this earth and have access to me talking right now, is that everything worked out. Everything's okay. Despite you being depressed, despite you having, really dark moments and potential SI, those moments, as long as you didn't act on them, we're still here. You still have the opportunity to regulate, to get back online, get your brain back online. Is it going to come all back together? No, not right away, which is why therapy exists and why asking for help becomes a very challenging situation, because one, your brain's offline, and that's an intentional choice that you have to consider, as well as it's probably interconnected with a lot of belief systems as to why you shouldn't. Again, topic and intersection for another time. But that is one of the first examples that I have is vacations or these breaks, just the way that our weeks are set up. And so when I start working with my clients, what I start doing is I just go, I don't know why I slammed the table, but I was like, you know what, breathing. And I will die on this hill. And after this past week with a great session in our group coaching about vagal nerve stimulation, shout out to Melanie, like it literally solidified why I die on this hill of like box breathing. Have it there all the time. The more that you can remember to do it, the more it will help you. And it takes everyone a different amount of time, but that's okay, because sometimes we have to go fast and then sometimes we have to go slow. And sometimes we're going to be stopped and going slow physically, but mentally we're going. Guess what? You now center, you have box breathing, you realign, and you're able to slow it down. That was more for me than for y'all. So, all right. So let's talk about my next example. And this is actually a healthier concept, but I say healthier because this can get unhealthy quickly from a mental health perspective, is exercise. Think about exercise. A nice gradual, slow walk is great for your mental health. But in terms of your physical health, it's going to take a long time for you to, if you do have to release weight, and because your body is carrying too much stress and inflammation, then a nice slow walk, just not going to do it. Cardiovascular health, you need a little bit more resistance. You need a little bit more. So this is why I do choose weightlifting and lifting heavy things, because I live a very fast, mentally fast life. I have to be there for other people. I absorb people's energies and stress all day. So I have to have a way to be able to release that, as well as regulate my hormones and my energy, because I'm chronically exposed to people's trauma all day. Okay, that's why. And then science backs that, is that especially after 30, we lose about 6% of our muscle mass every year. If you are not lifting some kind of weight or heavy weight, then you're going to end up having a mental health issue. That's a bold statement. It's potentially scary. So let me just validate that. So breathe, because it's just, I don't want you to be scared of the reality and be in denial of what could be coming. So when you start, it doesn't have to be going to the gym. Look at this. It's a resistance band. At least one person saw that live. And the rest of y'all are going to see it. So don't get a broken resistance band, but this can still work, actually. So we're resistant. I'm tightening my muscles and in my back. So this can help posture. But what it's also going to do over time with muscle regulation, one, it's going to heat up. You're going to start sweating. So it's going to start, your body's going to start moving faster because it needs to uptake oxygen more, and your mitochondria need to have some food to it. And it's going to start producing more energy for you, which is why people preach so much on exercise. I use the word movement. Yeah, I'm really kind of mad that I just broke my resistance band, but maybe it was a good thing. I don't know. Maybe I needed just one and not a whole circle. But it's a matter of getting your body to move faster, your cells to move faster, because if they move slow all the time, guess what? Guess how you're going to feel? You're going to feel slow. You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel that way. So this is where cardio, and I'm middle of the road on cardio. Cardio did not do much for me, honestly, other than make me feel really tired and thirsty and dehydrated. But lifting has been the sustainable part for me. Now I do some cardio when I'm wanting to burn more fat than I do, but actually muscle burns more fat than cardio. So, but getting off on a tangent here is that exercise is an example of why we have to have both. Why we have to understand that we have to move faster, and we also have to be able to move slower as well. Slower is more of, I don't want to say it's all mindset, because it is actually connected with your body. If you are one, so here's an example. I had a client this one time. Actually, it's not this one time. She's still a client here and there, who, if you're familiar with POTS syndrome, so POTS is, I can't remember the acronym. Y'all can Google it minimally. But if you struggle with POTS, what POTS is, it's a cardiac issue. So it's basically your irregular heartbeat that is causing lightheadedness, sometimes fainting. This person worked in the healthcare system. And all I started doing for her was, because I was realizing like her brain had a lot of issues with anxiety, depression, very big, like insecure, couldn't get her to start taking care of her body. And what I had her do, I This was when I was still in an office, but we went for a walk and I became the anchor for her, and I walked extremely slow. As for a 6 foot tall person, you'd be surprised at how slow I can walk. I also can walk pretty fast as well, but running that fast is not my forte. But so what I did, because she was like wanting to go, she's like, let's go for a walk, cool. And it was all because she was mentally processing. And so when we use our bodies to ground our minds and slow it down, we can slow our gait, slow down the process. And this is where people love yoga, but if you are a very high, fast traffic, mental, intellectual person, like my ADHDers and my autism people, overstimulation, then yoga is not going to be very comfortable for you at first. You're going to possibly need something a little bit more matched for the level of overstimulation that you tend to be on. Over time, will you naturally settle into a more regulated routine and be able to practice this. So exercise is an example. So for my last example, it's going to go into my last point. But real quick before I do that, I want to just touch real quick on like, how do you slow down? And now I'm not going to go into it in this video because mindfulness is a huge concept. And I'm not saying meditation for a reason, because meditation, still to this day for me, is definitely something that I could benefit from, but is not something I always connect with. And I'm still figuring that out. And again, it's just not about this video. But what I do think is a good practice for that's not just meditation. Sitting, on the ground and umming, it will help you. But again, if you are a fast-paced, high-intellect type of person like myself, then it's not always going to be that helpful. But mindfulness, I've found, is a lot more practical for those circumstances of people having a very fast-paced mind. And so if you go back, and I think I've done some videos on what mindfulness can look like, but as an example, it's really just being able to like slow down, not quite an outer body experience, but regulating your breathing is going to be one, and being able to kind of like lean back is the best way I can explain, like lean back and be able to watch how not only your thoughts come through, but your feelings, and connecting with the present moment. And our body is one way that we can do that. So our mindfulness can be about sensory activation, body connection, doing a body scan, focusing on a little bit of pain, because that pain is in the moment. It's telling you you need to be connected to your body and breathe and regulate so your body can move that energy that is in, and allow oxygen to come to whatever is pain, allow your body to heal itself. It can't heal itself if it's going too fast. And so that is probably one of it's a difficult one too, because I still, like I said, my brain, fast. Y'all can go back and watch some of my videos, and it's very evident, like, oh, okay, she's upbeat today. That's usually correlated around some times where I'm dealing with higher stress, fast. Higher stress and fast are not always synonymous. Just higher stress times. So previously, if you've been watching, I've went through a grief season, having lost, my 14-year-old cat. Like, he's like a son to me. And that was a very slow time, but I was very stressed. And so I wasn't able to, where was I going with that? Fast and stressful do not always mean the same things, but being able to slow down in those times of being slow, because my mind was going, I was grieving, I was feeling. And when we're able to like lean back and, I can sense myself getting irritable, right? And I'm like able to be like, okay, where is this coming from? Is this me missing TJ, or is this me needing a snack because my body needs to be grounded? And so given I just said that, I'll just throw this because it's on my spirit, is that when we're dealing with obesity, a lot of the times, it's just a perspective, and I'll have to explain it another time if you have questions, but it is your body self-soothing from being dysregulated. We go to eat, because our body, like, we're not necessarily hungry. One, we're in a mindless state, so we're not making that choice. But because we're not listening to ourselves, we're not being mindful of our own experience, your body is just finding a way to ground itself. Your body's, in you eating mindlessly in some aspect, is your body just seeking safety and trying to calm you down, because it's one thing that you can pay attention to. But that's why when we're dealing with mental health, it has to be an intentional conversation for you to be aware and to accept that that's just what your body's trying to do. Your body is just trying to get you to wake up. Maybe if she bites her tongue, she'll wake up. Sometimes we do, but sometimes we don't. So that's mindfulness in a nutshell. Being able to, another visual I use often with my clients is, if you're an iPhone user, I don't think it's just iPhone, but I just know because I have an iPhone, that when you have a video, right, you go to your photos and you open up this video, and at the bottom of the screen there is, like, you tap on the video, it comes up on the screen, and then on the bottom there is that visual of the rest of the video, and you can kind of put your finger on it and like move it back and forth. That's how I kind of conceptualize and visualize mindfulness, is being able to like look at your phone and of the current moment, and being able to move your finger back and watch how things happen and not make a judgment as to what's happening, and being able to watch it and figure, okay, where did that come from? How is that moving? And being curious about it. That's how you slow your mind down. You can't do that if the video is playing. The video has to be slow, to be stopped. And so when we can start building these connections and associations with these coping skills and what mindfulness is and how it's gonna make sense to us in our lives, we're on our way. I'm gonna be honest, because I wouldn't be having this conversation with no one if we were not on our way to that. But it takes time. It is a slow process, because when you have to go live your life and have fun, that's also part of the process. Therapy, you can't just sit at home and do nothing. I need you to go, as your therapist, like, I need you to go experience, not hopefully get into anything traumatic, but I need you to go experience life and be a little bit faster, and then come in and slow it down so we can take a look at, like, okay, what's going on here? Let's open this up. Let's figure out what is it that you need, what is it that you want from this experience, and how we move it. And that's how we rebuild this balance of your brain. We rewire. This is neuroplasticity conversation now. This is, like I said earlier, this is a matter of pleasure versus happiness. You don't lose pleasure when you become happy. Let's put that out there too. You get both. You get both. This is what I'm like, yo, that's one of my favorite things. You get both. So that is what fast and slow is really about. It is a matter of being able to be intentional about choosing which one you need in any given moment. So my last example, which I'm so excited about, technically this point in my life could be an example and tell y'all, which I already told y'all, is that the summer is going to be a little bit more fast-paced for me, because I push myself out of my comfort zone, and I'm doing a fashion show and modeling and opening myself up to that world, which it's scary. It's scary for me, but I'm not going to use that example fully. I'm going to use this example. So what this is, I believe it's an amaryllis. I was gifted this by my mother for Christmas this year. It is, for context, May 10th, December. So it's been about 5 months. And this is now the topic of my last point, which is plants. This is a fast and slow. They are a great representation of fast and slow, and everyone moves on a different timeline. So that's why we have to literally, I think the purpose of all of our lives is to understand the differences between us and in being able to navigate them. But it's a matter between patience and waiting. Patience is a skill, and waiting is a concept. Let me explain that. So this, like I said, I got this in December, and for the longest, until last week, I don't know, let me check this out. This obviously was not there. It only looked like this. And I was like, yo, that's not really, it's not going. Speed up. I wanted it to grow on my terms, okay? Because I have other plants not these because these are fake in a virtual background, but my money tree, what's my other plant that grows pretty? My succulents actually grow pretty quickly. They are in a different timeline than this amaryllis, to the point where I started losing faith that she was not going to bloom. And then I went away last weekend, and I don't water her. It's in a wax bowl because there's no water. There's no, like, it's indirect sunlight. Like, what the heck, right? And I come home from my modeling gig in DC, right, to this. And I'm like, what? So I'm like really excited to, see what she looks like. But I just wanted to use plants as my last example as a concept of fast and slow. We all have plants are different species. We all have different reactions to plants. I, at one point, claimed to not have a green thumb. Proved myself wrong with this one, and some of my other ones. But there are just different people who are going to grow and at different speeds, at different rates. However, I think the rest of this conversation that we've had today is that we all have brains and we all have to figure out how they work in respect to the realities that we live in. And so some people's brains do work absolutely different, but there are some similarities that in science has helped us, neuroscience has helped us be able to find a happy medium between different brains, because for the most part, they react in the same way. There may be everyone's different. So that's why I constantly love my job, is because there's never really boring moment, is because I get to figure out what people and how they are different for themselves, and for them to understand that, for me to understand it as well. And it's been a huge blessing in my life to be able to learn from so many different types of people. But people bloom at different times and in different speeds. And I'm constantly reminded that some of my clients have taught me that, but sometimes it just doesn't really set in, because we want what we want. We're in that pleasure-seeking mood of, like, I want gratification of you reaching your goals, so that means I have helped you, right? Like, or something like that. And I'm also a representation of that. I bloomed later than a lot of people, and I'm blooming currently. I don't necessarily know what's to come from the rest of this. I just know that it's beginning. This summer is going to be a real testament to that, between the fashion show, and then we have 7 days to Creativeverse. And what Creativeverse is to me is me having learned and really appreciated the process of recovery of what I believe, and manifested something for myself that I really wanted. I said I wanted to become a speaker, and I wanted to scale myself. And then thankfully, Creativeverse last year happened, and this is year 2, and we're still going strong, if not stronger. And I look forward to how it really turns out. But that's pretty much the end of this fast, slow topic that I wanted to bring up today. And so I want you to take a look at, where, there's some systems and things in our lives that are going to be fast, and they're going to stay fast. We just need to know where they are and identify them, so you can not group all the other things that can go slower in with the fast things. You don't have to do everything fast, but your brain sometimes convinces you of that, and ultimately creates a diagnosis and an issue for you. So I would encourage you guys to just assess. Some things can move fast. Some things need to move fast. Some things really need to move slow. And that slow process is a training process. So if you have any other questions about how to train that, like I said, the app, you can go to my website, sarawilderlcsw.com. Go to and download the app on my website. But I have a centralized location for most of everything that you really need to start being able to process how to create change and alignment transformation in your life. So if you need any other help, DM me, let me know, and I will see y'all. Actually, I will not see y'all next week, but I will go live, because next week is Creativeverse. And so Friday I'll be doing a walkthrough of our space and trying to get mentally prepared, because Saturday is the day where I do my workshop, and that I'm just excited about, because I got to create this workshop and I'm excited. And yeah, so that will be next Friday. So I will not see y'all talking about a topic, but maybe you'll see me pop up on your live schedule. So, All right, you guys have a great weekend. Hopefully you can find a way to slow down intentionally and really connect with your body. Go back, watch the rest of the video as I explain how to do that, and I'll see you soon.